This is a flat map. There's absolutely nothing here except for this store and the selling point. And this is exactly where I'm going to spend the entire next year, starting with a small lawnmower. My goal is to build my own farm with a large railway. Today, we're going to expand our field and even build several branches of railroad tracks. So if you're interested, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Waking up in September, the first thing I did was start collecting the straw left after the oat harvest. I earned just under $1,500 for a full trailer. I decided to use this money to fix the problematic areas that had formed after the construction of the railway. After that, I continued collecting the remaining straw from the field and sold it too. Then I returned to the farm. I needed to continue building the railway line. I wanted to simplify the transportation of crops from our fields, so I decided to lay tracks right to the edge of the field. To do this, I had to dismantle part of the old road and start constructing a new branch running along the plot. Unfortunately, the money from selling the straw wasn't enough, so I decided to wait until our sheep produced enough wool. The proceeds from selling it would allow me to finish what I'd started. While I waited, I began expanding the field. The bigger it is, the more we can earn from the harvest. I managed to increase it nearly threefold, which will significantly boost our productivity. However, part of the plot that had already been harvested needs reclamation, and we don't have a cultivator. On top of that, I still want to finish building the railway. While the field was being expanded, the sheep didn't manage to produce enough wool for sale. So the only quick way to make money now is by selling grass. I hooked up the mower and began coating a huge area, since we urgently need money. By the way, this didn't take us as much time as I expected. I decided it would be better to first rake all the grass into windrows, and only then start collecting and selling it. But for that, we needed a windrower. Since we had no money to rent one, I sold one full trailer of grass. It brought in almost $2,000, enough to rent a windrower. I immediately went to the store, picked a suitable model, and then returned to the farm to first bring back the forage trailer. After that, I went back to the store, this time for the windrower. After hooking it up, I got right to work, slowly gathering the grass into neat windrows, since this greatly speeds up the later collection. When everything was ready, I returned the equipment to the store and headed home. It had already gotten dark outside, so I decided to rest. From the very morning, I already knew what I'd be doing. Huge area of uncut grass, and today it needed to be sold. Besides, I noticed that there was a debt on our account, a little over $2,000. It appeared because we are renting a tractor. That's bad, because every month we pay more and more for its rental. So I'm seriously considering returning it and buying our own. Also, we should stop using rented equipment altogether. These expenses are becoming more and more burdensome. The work wasn't difficult, but it took a lot of time. Luckily, the weather was great today, just right for collecting grass. The only thing that bothers me is the capacity of our trailer. I wish it were a bit bigger, but we'll upgrade it later. For now, our task is to earn enough money to continue building the railway. With every trailer sold, the balance slowly increased, and that brought real satisfaction. Fortunately, I managed to sell all the grass in half a day and earned almost $28,000 from it, quite a substantial amount. And when I returned to the farm, I saw that our sheep had already produced enough wool, which could also be sold. I hoped to earn a bit more money from it. I hooked up the regular trailer and started loading the wool pallets, then headed to the selling point. For all the accumulated wool, I received almost $12,000, a pretty good result. considering that all we did was just keep the feeders filled with grass. On the way back home, I started thinking that maybe we should focus more on sheep farming. After all, selling wool brings us a steady income, even if it's not huge. So I decided to invest part of the earned money into expanding the flock to buy another 50 sheep so that wool would be produced more and faster. This, in turn, would allow us to generate good profit. I think this plan will work. Buying 50 sheep cost us a bit over $26,000. I didn't fill the pen completely. I left some free space so that the sheep could reproduce and gradually increase in number. Since we still had a small amount of money left, I finally decided to build a shed for storing equipment. We had already accumulated quite a bit of machinery, but didn't have a proper place to keep it. For $10,000, I built a shelter, which I think will be enough for now. And since we had started doing construction, I also decided to build a convenient crossing over the rails to our field. Right now, we have to cross them very carefully because the tractor bounces hard on the tracks. Using pallets and boards, I managed to build a simple but reliable decking. It cost us very little, but made crossing the railway tracks much easier. After finishing all the work, I realized it was time to rest. Many more tasks still lie ahead. For several months, I was transporting the wool produced by our sheep to the store. I managed to earn a little over $115,000 from the sales, an excellent amount that would finally allow us to buy everything we had long dreamed of. First, I went to the store and started choosing a new tractor. Of course, I returned the old one. Instead, I chose a John Deere tractor. Its power was roughly equal to the previous model, but it had one important advantage: a front platform for attaching mounted equipment. This would be a big plus in the future and would significantly speed up our work. The tractor cost $45,000. I also immediately decided to purchase a cultivator, which would allow us not only to work the soil, but also to create new fields. After reviewing all the available options, I chose an inexpensive 4-meter cultivator, exactly the kind our new tractor could easily handle. Everything we needed was bought, and I got to work delivering the equipment. First, I got into the new tractor, attached the trailer to it, and took it to the farm. Then I went back for the cultivator and headed straight to the field to finish the job I had started. Once I arrived, I immediately got to work. The new cultivator turned out to be very convenient, and the job progressed quickly. In just half an hour, everything was ready. Now all that remained was to finish building the new branch of the railway. When I started laying the tracks, I immediately noticed that the route ran slightly beyond the edge of our field. And when construction was fully completed, I confirmed this. So I decided to expand the field a little more so that it would reach right up to the railway. In addition, I started thinking about creating a field on the other side of the tracks. After all, if we make another large field, we'll be able to harvest twice as much. So, without wasting any time, I immediately began expanding the first field. To make it as even as possible, I entered construction mode and marked the plot boundaries. After that, I continued working on soil preparation. When everything was ready, I slightly leveled the edges so the field would look neater. Then I started wondering whether it was worth spending time on creating another field right now. Considering all the advantages of this idea, I finally decided to go ahead and started marking the boundaries of the second field. It turned out to be about the same size as the first one, so I immediately got to work, since cultivating such a large area would take quite a lot of time. I finished only when the sun had already begun to set. I carefully transported the cultivator across the tracks, and then laid a road to the new field while there was still daylight. I also decided to sell our old plow, since we now have a cultivator that can be used to create new fields. The plow is no longer needed, and so as not to return home empty-handed, I also bought a seeder and some sacks of seeds, because the next day I plan to start sowing. I chose the same model of seeder that we had rented last time. I really liked it. I also stocked up on a lot of seed bags, since we now have 2 fairly large fields. The entire purchase cost us just under $13,000. But this investment is definitely worth it. The seeder will come in handy more than once. After hooking it up to the tractor, I immediately poured in the seeds. They all fit, and there was even a bit of space left, which I filled with leftover seeds from the previous sowing. Carefully placing the seeder under the shelter, I went to rest. The day had been tough, but we did a great job, and that truly felt good. Early in the morning, as usual, I decided to check on our sheep to see how they were doing, and there I was met with a pleasant surprise. We had our first little lambs. This made me really happy, because the more sheep we have, the more wool they will produce, which means the higher our profit will be. After admiring the newborn lambs, I remembered that we still needed to sow our 2 huge fields. So I got into the tractor and immediately got to work. This time, I decided to plant canola. I figured we could earn more from selling it than from oats. Besides, I didn't feel like dealing with straw again. Pass after pass, I gradually sowed the first field, and within a few hours, it was completely done. After that, I moved on to the second field and continued sowing. By the time the day came to an end, the job was finished. Now all that remains is to wait for the canola to ripen. But before that, we still have a lot of preparation to do to simplify the harvesting and transportation process. Judging by the size of the fields, we'll have quite a lot of crop. After putting the trailer back in place, I decided to sell the accumulated wool. And just as I was approaching the selling point, I noticed that our tractor was almost out of fuel. But that wasn't a problem. There was a gas station nearby. I filled the tank to the top, and then I could calmly continue working. After selling the wool, our balance reached almost $63,500. This amount should be enough to buy a wagon for our locomotive. We'll be using it to transport the canola. The wagon cost us $40,000. It's quite a large sum, of course, but with it, we'll greatly simplify and speed up the transportation of the harvest. After the purchase, I returned to the farm, parked the trailer, and headed out on the locomotive to pick up the new wagon. Upon arriving at the store, I carefully coupled the wagon and headed back. Even though our locomotive doesn't look very powerful, it handled the task perfectly and pulled the wagon with no issues. Once I got back to the farm, I drove the train under the shelter. Now we just need to lay the tracks directly to the selling point so we can get there by train. I hope the remaining money in the budget will be enough to complete this part of the job. I decided to set up a convenient access route to the pallet selling point and to the grain elevator. After all, in the future, I plan to transport all the products produced on our farm exclusively by train. As a result, we ended up with a very beautiful railway, which I'm sure will pay for itself quickly. And this is just the beginning. Later on, I plan to build several more branches for all future train routes. After finishing the construction, I decided to check the work and took a ride on the locomotive all the way to the selling point. Everything worked perfectly. So, in a great mood, I headed off to rest. Early the next day, our sheep once again filled the storage area with wool pallets, so I took them to sell and earned almost $23,000 for the lot. With that money, I decided it was time to build myself proper housing. Living in a tent was getting harder and harder. Not far from the farm, I set up a mobile home. For now, I think that will be enough. Around the house, I put up a fence, built a small shed, planted flowers, and arranged the area to make it comfortable for living and resting. After that, I decided to take a short break until our canola fully ripened. The only thing I did during this period was sell wool. And by December, we had almost $124,000 in our account. But that wasn't all. Overnight, the sheep produced a new batch of wool, which I also sold. Our balance increased by approximately another $20,000. Now, we had enough funds to build a grain elevator near our fields. I planned to unload the harvested crop there, and then load the grain into our wagon. The elevator itself cost us $100,000. I also arranged a convenient access route to it, so the tractor could easily cross the tracks. In the end, we got a very convenient elevator, and since the harvest was already ripe, I could immediately begin collecting it. I got into the harvester and started working. Bit by bit, I collected the crop and transported it to the elevator. But I quickly realized that it would take a very long time to finish the job. I quickly realized that there was no way we'd be able to harvest both of these huge fields in just one day. The work wasn't going as fast as I'd hoped, and there was less and less time left until evening. But that's not a problem. I'm sure that by the next day we'll be able to finish everything we started and earn a pretty solid amount from selling the canola. The effort, the equipment, and all the work we've done will definitely pay off. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time!